I have an important message for a select few. That's not all of you. This is for a select few of you guys that are listening or watching this. It's for trade business owners that have been around for a while. They understand the frustrations of marketing and being in control or not being in control. Guys, it's 2021 and many of you are marketing yourselves like it's the year 2000. Off the back of a global pandemic, we've seen huge shifts in the market with people turning to service providers they know, like, and trust. There's never been a better time to establish the tools and frameworks in your business to take advantage of these things. These things that will serve you not only now, but serve the business ongoing. Over at Tradie Web Guys, we've recently launched the Elevation Program. It equips businesses with the tools and the programs required to successfully market themselves. It gives you tools to re-engage with your past and present clients whilst nurturing potential clients. It creates assets in your company's name with no proprietary licenses. You own these things 100%. It gives your business a huge head start on the search engines with advanced SEO, and it collates all of the programs and all the services you need into one neat little bundle, including things like web development, website management, email marketing, SEO, Google Ads, loads of different softwares, strategy, support, and a bunch of other things. After going through this program, you'll have all the tools you need to market your business ongoing. You'll have a huge head start in your marketing, and you'll also have a CRM so you can continue to build your database whilst engaging your current customers and re-engaging those customers that you've essentially forgotten about. Marketing tools that you need, and they'll all be in your control. You don't owe anyone anything. You'll be able to dial it up and down essentially as you see fit. So why is this an important time to talk about this? Guys, it's important to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Meaning, you want to be in control. You want to know enough to be dangerous. I'm not trying to give you more work here. Essentially, we'll set everything up for you, teach you the basics, and then it's all yours. It's complete transparency. You'll never grow a business past a certain point without marketing. Word of mouth will only ever get you so far. We've spoken about it on the podcast a load of times. At some stage, you need to invest in these things. This is the simplest and most affordable way to do it. For more information, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/elevation, fill in the form, and let's make 2021 the year that you took control. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Bill, welcome back to the Site Shed podcast. How are you, mate?
Good, Matt. Thanks.
This is part 3 of the Building Trust and Rapport by Becoming a Great Storyteller series that we are conducting. This episode is the 3rd and final. So for you guys that have not yet had a chance to listen to part 1 and 2, I thoroughly encourage you to go back and check that out, because as always, these episodes are designed to stem into each other. Episode 1 was why your story matters more than ever. In that episode, it was really cool because we peeled back, I think, some of the apprehensions and false beliefs around the reality of what the services you guys do and how interesting they are to other people, and what an amazing position you guys are in to be creating useful and relevant content that speaks to your customers and potential customers. In the previous episode, which was number 2, we were talking about laying the storytelling foundations, during which Bill gave an amazing framework and starting point for everybody out there to be going and creating a framework and a benchmark for their storytelling foundations, content foundations. It was absolutely fantastic. Go back and check that one out. In this episode, we're pulling it all together. So in part 3 here, we're going to be speaking a little bit to, a number of things, but certainly understanding what types of content might suit you and what types of content would suit your customers, talking a little bit to how you can use media and current affairs and news and things like that to newsjack, for better choice of word, how we can extract find and extract useful pieces of content from projects that we do. Every piece of project that we do, we're going to talk a little bit about overcoming some of our fears in the content space, which is going to talk to a lot of video recording and things like that, and then how we can repurpose some of those pieces of content so that we can target, different platforms and different types of customers across different types of platforms. So, all right. Well, yeah, that's out of the way. Well, actually, we should talk about Bill, I suppose. Bill's from storysalesmachine.com. That's storysalesmachine.com. Storytelling and copywriting guru. And we certainly appreciate your time here, Bill. Thank you once again for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
So pulling it all together, full circle in this episode, Bill, and it's been a great series so far. And I imagine this one here is going to be I suppose, last episode definitely is going to be, is a fantastic starting point for everyone. And I feel like in this episode, we're going to take some of those principles that we learned in the last episode, and we're going to be able to apply this to, practically apply this. How we're going to do this, what that strategy might look like, how we're going to overcome some of those fears and apprehensions we might have when we haven't done these kind of things before. Because it's all great having a strategy, but at the end of the day, if you don't actually apply what you've created, then it's all for nothing, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And implementation is everything. Maybe we should just start with the fact of that people are shy about coming up with their own stories, or they are under the misunderstanding that they don't have stories in them that are worthy, that there's stories around them every day. It's funny, when I started this Story Sales Machine project in business, I was teaching this to people, and I found myself telling people this all the time, and I sincerely believe it to be true. And that is, and I know it's true for me, and I'll bet it is for you too, Matt. I'll bet there was probably at least half a dozen to a dozen things that happened to you yesterday that you will forget 5 years from now, but absolutely would make a perfectly fine story in a piece of content.
100%. Even like things I learn in books. I do this all the time. I'll sit there and I'll take a photo of something I learned in a book with the hope of creating content on it, and I just forget about it. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't.
Yeah, and they can come out of the most mundane moments, and these could be moments with your clients, for example, either on checking out their house and giving them an estimate. I could be in line at a grocery store, and if I could tell the cashier's having a bad day, one of my go-to phrases is "never stops, does it?" Because that just is really validating to them, and it's amazing the remarks I get back. Like the person usually it'll pull them out of automation mode, and they'll look up at me, and they'll have this look of gratitude, like, "Oh my gosh, you understand." And that's a story right there, and it's that kind of moment with a client or a customer that speaks to deeper reasons that you can pull stories out of. And we all have moments like that in our lives every day. And so, again, I just want to encourage people to somehow collect these stories, and I have some tips on how to do that are very easy, and I think would really help people and get them on the flywheel of creating more and more stories.
And I think, that's a testament definitely to Sue. It's almost a metaphor really for, I think, just day-to-day transactions. There's just so many things, and we're so often used to doing things a certain way and perhaps responding a certain way to different engagements or conversations or whatever, that we neglect or we don't see, because of the blinkers, these amazing opportunities that are staring us in the face. And you can almost 100% guarantee any conversation you're having with a client is going to have you advising them in some way about something, for the better part. So they're calling you because they want to talk about something that's gone wrong, or something that they'd like to, they're considering, or whatever it is. And we're happy to go and just off the cusp, talk to them about what we recommend there. And that is an amazing piece of content potentially, So, or that is an amazing story, or even the fact that they've come to you for that sort of, to help them get an answer on that topic. That's putting you up on a pedestal. You're the expert. They're coming to you for information on these things. So I would say, just as you said then, Bill, try to establish and extract that message from that conversation or those conversations. That is such a useful skill. And I say skill because, although a lot of you think, I would never do that, you can learn it. A skill is something that can be learned. And, you do get better at these things.
It's in all of us. When you think about it, the printing press wasn't invented until hundreds of thousands of years after we evolved. The main channel of communication for eons was telling stories. That's how you learn the history of your tribe or whatever.
Right.
And so it's all in us. It's ingrained. It's how we learn. It's how we process information is through stories. It's the best way we know how. So this is natural to us. Don't think it's something that you have to learn. It is. It's just something you have to, maybe the better way to put it is open yourself up to.
It's interesting, this year for me, like my goal for the whole year was I want to optimize and improve the way I do everything. So, that whole 1% theory.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of the year, I took a reading course and I doubled my reading speed. And then I took a memory course and I was learning how to improve like different things, right? And ironically, and you'll love this, but one of the tricks for improving your memory relates to storytelling. And so like the periodic chart, for example, which, for the better part, if you tried to sit there and remember the first 10 elements of the periodic table, it would be quite a challenge because they don't really mean anything and it's quite boring and mundane. But how to do like this exercise teaches you how to take those elements and turn them into a story. And by doing that, you're creating like this journey which takes you through the different elements. And all of a sudden, you've got this amazing memory of this story, which then teaches you the first, 10 elements of the periodic chart. So again, like we are conditioned, like you just said, Bill, we're conditioned to understand story and relate to story. And for whatever reason, we don't do it, probably because it's been beat out of us or because we just don't practice it. And, now sort of in the digital age and all this kind of thing, like you said, Bill, with a print press and having the ability just to pull up a phone and pull up information on anything we want at a couple of clicks of a button, that skill's kind of been, I won't say lost, but not being used, because of just basic lack of need for it.
Yeah. And one little habit that I've gotten into, and I learned this from a gentleman named Matthew Dix. There's a great YouTube video. He wrote a book called Storyworthy. And he talks about how at the end of his day, he just takes 5 minutes and he just writes down, what was the most story-worthy thing that happened to me today?
Right.
And it could be something innocuous like the cashier moment I told you about earlier. It's just something. And all you have to do is write a few words about it. Because years later, if you read enough just telling detail, it could be just as short as 2, 3, 4 sentences. You'll remember that. And if you train yourself to do that every day, even just for 5 minutes, then when you're out during your day, during the other 23 hours, your radar is going to be more attuned to stories and you'll recognize them because you know that you're looking for them.
So let's talk a little bit practically about that. So for the guys out there that are watching this, listening to this, right? This is what I want you to do, the next job you're on. So you might go to a project. You're going to a project because you're there to address an issue, no doubt, a problem or, whatever it might be. You're there to solve that problem. So what is obvious to you is a customer's calling you up because their hot water heater's blown up, right? So that's obvious. They've called you because they need a hot water replacement. But what are the actual problems they're having as a result of not having hot water? Maybe they can't bathe their kids. Maybe they can't, maybe you're having cold showers, whatever it might be. Like, let's think a little bit outside of the box here in relation to what problems are happening as a result of this unit not working. Try and think a little bit about that because that's really how you can pull useful nuggets out of mundane topics. In my experience.
Yeah. And also keep in mind that the more problematic, the more dramatic that the drama part of that story, let's say their hot water heater blew up. It just so happened to be when they had let their laundry all pile up and now they couldn't wash their clothes properly.
There you go.
We're attracted to stories where things go wrong.
Right.
So in terms of content pieces, if you want to grab people's attention, that's a great way to look is for, things where something happens that's just a little more lurid or just attention getting that way.
Because part of the story, guys, as well, is like we've come up with a problem or we've established the problem. We've shown proactive thinking about how we can fix this problem. And then as the hero, we solve the problem, right? So like it's really about understanding like the journey of this conversation. Whereas if you think, I'm just going up there to fix a hot water heater, sure, but there's a lot more to it than that when you come to creating a piece of content, or telling a story about the piece of content. So I would just advise you to take the blinkers off in that regard and really speak to the problems that you're solving, not so much the process. News and the current affairs is a good one. Like I know in the past we've told stories about, now's a really good example actually, because we've got over here, the Australian government is about to, there's a certain building stimulus package, which is about to end, like a post-COVID stimulus package, which is about to end, and a lot of builders are behind the eight ball with that. And one of my media contacts called me last week and he's like, "Oh, have you got any builders that I could speak to that are having issues meeting these deadlines and all these kind of things?" So like the obvious story is, well, government stimulus package is about to end. But then the story behind it is, well, there's a whole bunch of builders here which are trying to keep up with the demands of this deadline. They can't source material. They can't source labor. Like there's a whole bunch of different things that are going on in the background, which are becoming part of this story all of a sudden, so it's not always obvious. And some of these things you can relate to. And some of these things are, if people are interested in them, if they're like hot topics in the media, then, you can speak to that and you can gain interest through, like they call it media jacking or whatever, but essentially you're just talking to topics that are, that are present.
Yeah, it's taking advantage of the fact that everybody's, watching the same news for the most part. And when you can kind of tap into that, you've already got half their attention.
So, and then the other thing, Bill, we should talk about the different types of content creation and capture, and how we can repurpose these different types of content, and we can tell our story, in different ways across different platforms. And because people think, and I've been guilty of this myself, sometimes you sit there and you think, oh my God, how am I going to come up with, 20 pieces of content for the next 12 months? But when content can be repurposed in so many different ways. And like take the podcast, for example, like we're doing this as a video podcast, which is going to be repurposed as an audio podcast. So that's a really simple way to do it. And then, we might take this podcast and we might turn it into a blog post, or we might take this podcast and we might turn it into a little mini course with some actionable how-tos or something like that, some checklists that people might get. So you can kind of repurpose all these things, in many different ways. Do you have any advice as to where people should start and what types of mediums they should start telling their stories on? Video, blogs, emails, so on and so forth?
Well, the first thing I would say is start with what you're most comfortable with, because then that'll ensure that you actually do it.
Sure.
I'm partial to email because I think email is just so easy to do. You just kind of open up your email browser or whatever email service provider you're using, whether it's ActiveCampaign or Klaviyo, whatever it is, and you just kind of write an email. And even if you don't have any images, you can just kind of write text and there you go. So that, to me, that's an easy starting point is email. But, a lot of people listening might have blogs and it's easier for them to do a blog post. So I would start with whatever's easy. And then once you get that foothold created, like you said, there's so many different ways you can spin it off. You can turn an email into a blog post, which becomes a Facebook post, which becomes an Instagram post. I mean, there's just, so many ways to do that.
Yeah, I guess the good thing about email is like you can really, provided you're using the right technology, you can really gauge engagement of interests, within different things. So, if somebody has an interest in this, we can ask them if they engage with it. Great. There's a great opportunity to, create more content on that and double down on that piece, repurpose it, whatever you want to call it. I think for the better part, there's, in my experience, Bill, with the guys, the guys that we work with in the home service, trades, construction, so on and so forth. The funny thing is, I speak to these guys like I'm speaking to you. They're smart. They present well. They speak well. They're like a really prime candidate, in my opinion, for doing exactly what we're doing right now on video. And for whatever reason, as soon as we hold a phone up in front of their face, they clam up and they can't talk to it. I don't know what it is. I do it myself, to be honest. Like I can sit here and have this conversation with you all day, and then I'll go and record the introduction, cock it up 15 times and delete it. Like, I don't know what it is, but I certainly know that over the years, it's become a lot easier for me to do it. And now I can pretty much record something, one hit, one go, bang, no problem, send it off to my editors or whatever. So I think, like, from my point of view, when you're in a position where you're trying to build, like as a tradesperson, you're trying to build trust and rapport that speak to people, I really think you can't go too far wrong with video. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, I think in the last episode, Bill, and it's best that it's not super rehearsed. Like, you don't, the power of these phones these days is amazing and more than enough, provided, I suppose, that you just make sure you've got the right sound. So you may need a lapel mic, and, you got to make sure that you're just thinking about things like lighting so that you're not facing, away from the lights, that kind of thing, like basic things, right? But again, like, you get better at these things as you go. The first podcast I did sucked. After 300, we're kind of getting better at it, but there's always room for improvement. But I think, like, some of these apprehensions that we have holding us back so much, and something like video, I think realistically, if I ask one of my clients, okay, I want you to go and write a 1,000-word blog for me, have it to me by this afternoon, like, I can 100% say it's never going to get done. If I said to them, can you just go and just record a 3-minute video on the job that you just completed and talk to this, and this, they'll do that, no problem. They can do that, no problem. If I get them on a Zoom call and I ask them the same questions, they do it, no problem. If I say do this on your phone, for whatever reason, it causes some issues. So I think, like, speaking specifically to you guys out there, if you can get comfortable with doing that on your phone, just recording these little snippets. They don't have to be long. They don't have to be overly edited. They don't have to be super rehearsed. You can get comfortable with doing that. It's such an amazing foundation and skill that you're developing that I can almost guarantee your competitors are not doing it. And if you question that, go onto YouTube and find some guys in your vertical that are doing it well and see how they do it, But I think video is definitely where it's at when you're trying to become like an expert in the home service space.
No, you're so right that it doesn't need to be polished. I mean, authenticity just kind of is enhanced even the more unpolished it is. And, it's interesting for me just to speak personally. I was a copywriter for clients behind the scenes. This Story Sales Machine product I have is the first time I've put myself out there. And as a result, I had to record videos for the first time. And I'm extremely uncomfortable on video, but you're right, it gets easier. I have heard from customers who have purchased my product and said, the reason I purchased was because you just seemed so, unslick on camera, for lack of a better word. And it was in my favor that it was amateur hour. So I would really encourage people to just kind of get over yourself. People aren't looking at you the way they think you are. And it's just, it is weird. You hold up the phone and there is something that happens. I know what that is, but it does get easier and it's worth doing.
What I say to people is when you pull your phone out and you're recording this, record this piece of content like you're in a place where you don't have internet and you need to do a recording on this job for them so you can send it to them when you get back in the office. That typically makes it a little bit more more achievable mentally. And I normally advise people to follow the who, why, what, how, when sort of formula, just so that they're sort of ticking all the important boxes. And that normally is enough as a starting point, and you doesn't, and again, the less polished is often good. Even if you look at some of these, amazing content creators like AppSumo, for example, they at the end of every reel they do, they put in a blooper because it's just funny and it makes it relatable. And people they're actually hilarious. Like I always stick around and wait for the bloopers because they're always so funny. So don't worry, like people aren't expecting you as an electrician to be a, highly skilled newsreader. It's not your job. Your job is an electrician. People know that. Don't worry about the fact that you're not speaking like a newsreader. Just be yourself. And that's, I think, such an important part of building that trust and rapport because people want to relate to that,
Yeah, absolutely.
So then once you've sort of got that piece of content, and I know so many guys out there are going to go, nah, you just lost me there. I'm never going to do the video. Fine, don't do it. I don't really care at the end of the day. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. I'm just telling you right now what I know is what would help you separate yourself from your customers. But like once you've got that piece of content, then, as part of that storytelling process, you can really start leveraging different platforms. And so, if you've got a video, you might be able to chop it up into little, 3-minute bites and syndicate that across an email automation. Or maybe you can send it to YouTube and build out a YouTube channel or a YouTube playlist. Or maybe you can start dropping these little snippets into Instagram or perhaps over to, your Facebook page or your Facebook profile or whatever it might be. So it really puts you in a position of power in the sense that you've got a piece of content that you can use. And I always say to guys, if you've got the content, you can use it. If you don't have it, you can't use it. There's no point in going, oh, damn, I wish I did a video on that project we finished, last month. It's too late. Make it part of your process. Do it before you leave that job, make it part of your checklist, record a video on this, and then it's done and it's saved. And even if you never use it, at least you've got it.
And don't you think there's got to be at least 3 lessons out of every job? Why not make it part of your process that not only are you kind of filming and, documenting what's happening on a particular project, but you come away with, these are 3 things I learned, or this is just one thing I learned at this particular job, because every job is different and different challenges come up. And what a great piece of content to pass along is the story of whatever you learned at that particular project.
Exactly. And that again, taking the blinkers off, that story that you learned doesn't necessarily have to relate to, the way that you put your high pressure water jetter down the drain. It could relate to an issue you had with your job management software, or, a better way that you were able to communicate with a customer, or perhaps a WHS compliance method, which you develop for that specific project, which you can roll out in other jobs, like whatever it is, like there's a million different things that happen before you actually even get to the job. So, understanding that there's little bits of stories and useful insights that you can pull from that whole framework is super, super valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
Bill, what do you reckon? I think we're pretty much done here.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of good ground.
Tell us a little bit again about storysalesmachine.com. Talk to us a little bit about some of the courses and things that you've got. I'm pretty keen to hear.
Yeah, storysalesmachine.com. Basically, I put this together because I realized that so many businesses have an email list and either don't email their list enough, or they don't email it well enough. They're not telling stories. We're all sick of the same old coupons and shop now and buy, and that just turns people off. So I created a training that allows people to send emails easily and tell stories in a more engaging way. And that's the story on that.
Beautiful. Well, mate, thank you so much for your time. For you listeners and viewers out there that have any questions or want to get hold of Bill, are you in the Facebook group now, Bill? I can't remember.
You know what? I don't think so.
Okay, I'll invite you. By the time this goes live, you'll be in there. But yeah, guys, if you have any questions or if you have any follow-up, feedback or any information as to things that you have done right, haven't done right, what works, what doesn't, well, we'd love to hear it. So please let us know. Head across to the Facebook group, and when you see these podcasts come out, you can post your experiences within those comments. Bill, thank you very much once again for your time. We appreciate everything that you've been instilling upon us.
You bet, Matt. I enjoyed it.
And listeners, that is a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.